God Morgan. God Morgan, for those of you who may be not Norse in your culture, in your certainly in your ancestry, God Morgan would be simply good morning. And so, happy Thor's Day to you. Today we celebrate the Norse god Thor. Thor was amazing and serves us very well today as an example of how we can go forward in our lives. Before we get started, I want to say huge shout out to New Reality TV. Thank you so much for providing this wealth of perspectives that we can observe and experience to allow ourselves better mental health as we gain perspectives and we gain different experiences. These will help us moving forward. Also, want to say for those of you who may have a few extra coins, by all means, feel free to drop them into the tip jar. We are always welcome, and it will go to a very good use as we move around the state and the country, helping people, particularly those who are struggling with potentially PTSD or some other psychological trauma that's affecting them. So please donate what you can. Every little bit helps. If you haven't had the chance yet to like, follow, subscribe us on the main platforms, including New Reality TV, please like, follow, and subscribe to us there, and you will not be disappointed. Hopefully, between the several shows, we'll give you the intellect that you need to become successful up here. Finally, for those of you who need potentially another ear to bend, someone to just listen and maybe offer some small suggestions to help you adjust your path and your trajectory through life, please visit my website at norsewhispers.com and /coaching to get a conversation started, and let's talk about where we're going to go. All right, so today we're talking about the power of Thor, and we're talking about physical strength, which is really what Thor had. With Thor, I shouldn't say had, I should say what was written in the sagas about Thor. Now, all kidding aside, Thor possessed much more than just this physical form of immense strength. Now, granted, the only wrestling match, and this is, of course, according to legend, that he would win, or lose, I should say, would be that with the old woman described in the story, named Time, and she would demonstrate that time, irrelevant of all other things, in the physical realm, time had a value that we needed to overcome, but that would ultimately, irrelevant of what we've done throughout our years, he would eventually win. Today we're talking about strength, but we're not talking about mental or physical strength. I want to talk about mental strength, making the decision and sticking to it. Many times we decide that we're going to, it's almost a joke at this point, where we make our New Year's resolutions, and by the middle of January, those resolutions have already caved to our everyday life. However, you possess the power, the energy, and all of the things that you need to make this change and make it permanent within your own mind. You do not need shamans, you do not need other understandings, other spiritual understandings. All you need is this and this. That's it. I spoke to you many times about the construct of our aura. Our aura, of course, being that electromagnetic force that surrounds us in everyday life. It is wrapped around the energy center within our spiritual self that kind of goes out into the spiritual realm around us, and it interconnects us with other spirits, spirits of other physical forms, spirits of deities, spirits of everybody, right? So we can connect through our aura. Now the aura had two parts. The inside of the aura with us was the space, the interspatial area that is where we essentially function. Our whole consciousness is within that space. Within that space were particles of energy at which we could illuminate. And what happened was we had energy that could be generated by our thought process when we're really super thinking about it and got a lot of things going on in our brain. This area within the aura became cloudy, became almost impossible to see through, and diffused the energy going out and in, right? So if we received energy from our ancestors, it would be diffused. We may not recognize it for what it is. Conversely, if the aura was very clear when this energy came through, now we can recognize it for what it is, the love of our ancestors, right? The respect of our ancestors, the hopes and dreams, everything they imagined, we are. So that energy is coming through, right? So all of a sudden, and then when we begin to connect to that ancestry, we look to it for answers, for guidance, maybe, or maybe even in my case, it started really as an amusement. I simply wanted to know where I came from, who I was related to, and it was all in fun until I found out where I was from, and until I found my ancestors. And then that energy really multiplied exponentially coming into my aura, right? So now I've got the edge of our aura is this field, and this field vibrates at a certain frequency. That frequency is depending on what our emotional state is at that very moment. Okay? So if we're super angry, or we're super depressed, or we're super in love, right? That frequency can be very high. It's the problem, not problem, I should say. The understanding here is when that frequency is very high and another individual's aura kind of presses into ours, it is almost repelled from our aura. Why? Because our frequency is so high. When that aura, right, not an angry C, just a nice, even, right? This is when we find other people's aura is able to just kind of come into ours. And when our auras cross, we pass information. We pass intellect, imagery, and emotion back and forth. Remember, those are the three parts of a particle, right? So a particle consists of three parts. The intellect, the imagery, and an emotional signature. So when this energy is received, remember our emotional filter is going to pick up on that emotional signature, and it's going to say, okay, release, go down to my heart, release those hormones. Those hormones then flood the brain. The brain then feels the way the energy says I should feel. If the event or experience that we've just had doesn't have this emotional signature, then our brain simply refers back to where it's at right now, right? So it's if I'm having coffee, I may be just just sitting there minding my thoughts, whatever, and I really don't have an a real high, excited emotional state. I simply have an emotional state, in which case, then that is just carried forward by, is that we have the power to change it. we can decide what we want to be. If we choose to be happy, then we can choose to do that. We change our focus to do that, and we can make that happen. We can generate the energy within our own selves that then generates into the mind, that alters this emotional filter, that then allows us to begin to see things that bring us joy. Now, one of the greatest exercises that I've used for people who come to me and speak of being depressed or upset or anxious all the time is find the thing that we want to see and train ourselves to see it. Set limits or set goals. Maybe limits is a bad idea. Goals is more the idea. In that we say, okay, I'm really depressed, I'm really sad. So I need some things that bring me joy, that bring me happiness, that maybe will help me push away the energy of sadness or depression and now see things more pleasantly, more joyfully, right? So, in the case that I've used hundreds and hundreds of times, is I say, all right, what I want you to do is take this list of 25 things, and for the first 90 minutes, you're awake each day, find 25 things that bring you true joy. And then after that, we begin to expand that number. Of course, we start with 25 and then we begin to expand it as they get better and better. And what you're doing is you're training your focus, right? So you're like an elite athlete. For however long you decide to subscribe to this, we're training our brain to recognize this energy, right? So in much the same way that an elite athlete would train, they're going to set their mind to accomplishing, as a runner would maybe knock off another second or two in their run, whatever the case may be. They're setting goals, and then they're focusing their efforts, their energy, their everything about them is focused on that goal. In much the same way, setting 25 things that bring us joy and peace and comfort, or harmony, or all of these things that we really want, when we set those 25 things and we say, all right, brain, find them, the brain will do that. Now, what you don't realize, what many people don't realize, I would say, is that your brain is actually picking out what you see or what you experience every day. If our brain, as an example, is set to meh, or maybe even sad or depressed or angry, the things that you experience will simply reflect that. So you will only spot the things that continue to excite that emotion. So, as an example, if we were to get up on the wrong side of the bed, the coffee machine's too slow. It's not making coffee fast enough. My outfit doesn't look good together. I have to go through all these clothes, and what a hassle. And my favorite pair of pants doesn't fit. All of these things will begin to, or will appear to support that mindset, right? And so you kind of get stuck in that thinking. Now, conversely, if we get up on the right side of the bed, we may look at life and go, look at that. I put my feet down on a warm floor. I my outfit, I look great. I look wonderful. And so on and so forth. Traffic will be easier. Your work day will start easier. Everything seems to be easy. Why? Not because it's any different than it was when you woke up on the wrong side of the bed, but because you are interpreting it differently. Your brain is looking at these different parts of this experience. Both states, the negative state and the positive state, Both states are constantly present, they are always there. Our brain decides which of the two we see and experience and draw in energy from, right? So we could look at the same scene and see either the negative side or the positive side, right? And so that's really the strength that you have within you. The same thing that Thor represented to the Norse is that when Thor set his mind to something, he did it. When he attempted to regain Mjolnir from the giants, Loki. And so Thor and Loki went to the giant's cavern with Thor disguised as Freya or Fring. I don't remember who he was described, or maybe even his wife Sif. No, maybe it was Idun. Anyway, Thor was dressed as a goddess. He was in drag, so that the giant whom Loki had made a deal with to bring the bride for the giant, Thor dressed as this bride and said that he must see Mjolnir before he's willing to commence with the marriage. And so the giant, being tricked by Loki, brought Mjolnir, of which Thor immediately, as soon as the hammer got in Thor's hand, that was kind of the less discouraging part of that story, because he would then go ahead and turn things loose and make a mess, because he was upset that someone had stolen Mjolnir. Now, could he have been mad at Loki? And I'm sure he was. Yes. Could he have been just waged war on all the giants to get Mjolnir back? Sure. But in this case, we see where Thor and Loki made a plan and they stuck to it. They applied focus at getting Mjolnir in the room. Odin had given Mjolnir to Thor, very much like the Marvel films, to help Thor focus his power, his energy, into a beam that he could then use constructively. So, all of this points to someone or some method at which to control our thoughts. You have the energy and all the power necessary to make this happen. Many times, what happens is we make a commitment. We say, like the New Year's resolution, we say, this is what we're going to do. And then we don't think about it anymore. We just kind of let it pass away. We don't keep our focus on it. We don't make it a priority. It has no value in our minds. Therefore, it begins to slip away. And before you know it, mid-January-ish, we've forgotten all about our resolutions. So, the idea here is to move our focus and to keep our focus there. This is why we train our brain. We train our brain to focus on something and keep it there. In this case, our exercise is to focus our brain on finding good and comfortable and loving things, right, in this reality. Again, we can train our brain to look any way we want. We could see everyone as a negative, as a drudge, as very often my older children, they say, "Oh, I'm not a people person. I don't like large groups of people." And so I've taken that to mean that, much like myself, being an empath of for a very long time, when I was much younger, I didn't understand empathy. I did not understand it. And so I would have feelings that someone else was feeling. That's what empaths do. and I couldn't discern. So I kind of had to guess my way through it. Ultimately, I would come to understand that yes, here is this emotional energy being passed to me from this other person close by. This is why, um, while I love large groups, I am absolutely fascinated by humans and by people all around the world. It matters not any other thing. It's just the souls and the spirits that I feel are amazing now, and so I very much enjoy it. However, if I'm not prepared for it and I find myself, whoops, into a mall, uh, not too long ago, my one of my boys who is in a JROTC program needed a pair of shoes, dress shoes, but very particular kinds of shoes, and this, that, the other thing. And I was like, okay, to the mall, and we'll hit the shoe store in the mall. Well, being it was like Friday night, and we he needed to have these shoes for Monday morning. It's like, okay, last minute thing. We'll go to the mall. We'll go see if we can find you a pair of shoes. In the mall, because I had not really thought about being in a mall, I wound up going into the mall unprepared. And I was overwhelmed. There were so many emotions in a mall, so many just energies coming in from every direction. And I was like, okay, wow, we need to focus. And literally had to take a moment on one of the benches there in the mall and just bring it all back, right? Just here for shoes, move forward. It's a happy thing, get those happy affirmations getting in my brain, and just begin to filter the energy at what was mine and what was theirs, what was everyone's around me. It was very overwhelming. We find that quite often. Most of us, most humans, most physical forms, most, if not all, animals, and most foliage or fauna has empathy at its core. This is why when you see someone it, very upset, very sad, we can connect to them, or we can try to connect to them. What do? We try to cheer them up. This is your empathy saying, hey, here's this energy. Let's help them. Right? So, this is empathy, and we are all empathic. Now, there are many people who are better at it than others. Why? Because, as I mentioned before, there's a lot of energies kind of shifting around, and then you got to figure out who's you versus who's me, and who's them, and who's that person over there. Not to mention, on top of all of the localized people and spirits communicating with you, you may have remote spirits communicating with you as well. So you've got a lot of energies coming into your mind, which all bring, remember, the intellect, the imagery, and emotion. So all of this thing can be kind of overwhelming, understandably, which is why many people, I would say most people, shut it out. They turn their focus away from it to prevent it from overwhelming them. And we learn how to doubt it out as we're a young child growing up. We'll begin to doubt it out. Right? And that's what we do. We're trained to do that. Why? Because that other stuff may be voodoo, maybe, some kind of mystical thing, and many of the teachings of the modern monotheisms and the modern churches teach that that is not good, which is silly, but not going there. My point is is that you have a lot of this energy always coming into you that your brain has to kind of filter out. Now, your spiritual brain it's wide open. It can take all of this energy, and it's like, yeah, it has a wonderful time with it. But your physical brain struggles under the load of just this multitude of energies. And this is why, in this case, the mall certainly overwhelmed me temporarily. It's okay. We can move on. So, the main key that we're talking about here today on Thor's Day is our focus and setting our focus the way we want, not the way that's dictated by modern society or by 2,000 years of programming or not by you know anything else other than what we want. So when we live, remember, we're living authentically. So we're living in our authentic self, heart and mind, right? Are in alignment. Our authentic space, we're looking at the well of ourself, the values that we hold dear, who make what makes us us. And when we live according to that, we've got the bandwidth open in the brain to 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 focus, to bring in all of this energy into a stream that we can now manage. And that's really what we're trying to do, is we're bringing in all of this huge 360 down to a laser beam focus in front of us. That is the strength that you possess within your mind. Every human does. Some people say, well, I don't know that I'm smart enough for that. You are. You're more than smart enough. Because you don't want to think with this. You're using this. Right? You're not using these. You're using this. Our ancestors can show us the way. That's what they learned. That's the lessons that they got and they learned. And now they're trying to help you to understand it as well. For your health, for your betterment, for your growth, your evolution. All right? So today, I want you to take some time. I know today it's already kind of late. So tomorrow morning, first thing you wake up, I want you to think positively. Try to find 25 things that bring you joy, that bring you peace, that bring you comfort, that maybe reminds you of happy childhood memories. All of these things, whatever it takes to train your brain to then start looking for the good, because it's out there. It's out there as much as there is the bad stuff, there is the good stuff. All right? So train your brain and you will have a happier, healthier mental space. All right, my friends, we will see you tomorrow. I hope you have a wonderful Thursday. We will see you tomorrow where we will celebrate the goddess Freya. Wonderful goddess. We'll talk about the energies. All right, my friends. Love and light. Happy Thursday.